This bores blocks and it bores them to the mains. So there's a fixture that goes in the machine that the block goes into, and then the block goes into this machine. And one of the reasons why I got this machine, this is a Rottler. It's a pneumatic machine. It has a lot of automatic features. But what I like most about it is it's the load when you're boring a block is pushing downward. And most of the boring machines bring the deck of the block up to a surface plate. And the problem with that is that the load is pushing downward. So it's more likely that the block can move in the machine while you're boring it. So this machine, all the load is pushing down and the block is already down at the bottom in a fixture. So it doesn't want to move. It's being pushed in the direction that it's held down. After it comes out of the boring machine, it goes right into the Sunnen CV-616. And there's an automatic honing machine. It does an unbelievable job. You can get it within a tenth, top to bottom. It has a lot of different capabilities for crosshatch angle. It's a great machine. I was gonna get an upgraded honing machine, one of the later ones, one of the vertical machines, but I've decided against it because a lot of the people that I know in the industry that have gotten them have had problems with them.
This is a Sunnen valve guide machine, VGS-20. Works on pilots and cutters. Put the pilot in the guide, you have the cutter attached. Has variable distances so you can get sizes from real small to real large valves. And here's the cutter that we have. They have multiple angles so we can do them all at one time. And this machine will sweep it all at the same time. There's only one negative part about this machine. If they're extremely hard seats, it tends to flex the cutter slightly. That's why I finish them off with the stone. With this machine over here, the Newen, the newest state-of-the-art CNC valve machine, cuts with a one-edge cutter and does just a better job on the harder seats. The one thing you can't do with the Newen machine is putting guides. This is all about valve jobs and putting new seats in it, cutting the old seats to wherever you want it, any angle you want, any radius you want. It's a wonderful machine. It's just the cat's meow of valve machines.
And then over here we have our balance machine. It's a really nice balance machine. It tells you exactly what you need to do. It's almost like once you put the bob weight on a V8, it's almost like balancing a tire. It tells you how much metal to take out and where. Then back here is where I do all my welding. I have a TIG welder and a MIG welder. This is an oven where I straighten the heads and preheat them before I weld them. And then of course my lathe. I looked for this particular lathe. It's an IKEGAI A20. And one of my friends that owned a big machine shop had two of these that he did all prototype work on. His whole shop was all CNC, but he did the prototype work on IKEGAI A20s, and he told me to look for one of these machines because they have a super heavy 2-speed tailstock and they're workhorses and they don't really go bad, and the gear setup inside them is a Mitsubishi transmission. It's a regular stick shift transmission gearbox underneath this. So they're really indestructible. They are real workhorses. You could take off a 1/4 inch at a time when you're turning something. Really great lathe. It was Kenny Doak who told me to get it from K&K Machine. Here right now, but here's where I do all my hand porting. And I have an evacuation system here that pulls all the dust into a dust collector up top. And then after I grind, this is my first flow bench, the one I learned everything on, and that's why I would have a really hard time replacing it. It's a Superflow 600 bench with the twin manometers, so the pitot tubes get hooked up to the other manometer, and it works flawlessly. Through the years, I've replaced vacuum motors in it. In the back, it's got 6 vacuum motors back there, and that all go on at the same time. And through the years, a couple of them went bad, but it's easy to replace them. You can get them anywhere. They're just vacuum motors that I get at McMaster Car. And again, I've had it since the beginning. Everything I know about airflow, I learned on this 600 machine. I got this machine in 1989. Yeah, long time ago. This machine is, it's super important to have one of these machines in the shop because you could bore the big end or the small end of the rod by holding the other end, so both holes will be perfectly parallel. There's a fixture that goes up here. This is a veneer, so you set the center to center on the rod, and then it holds the rod with a collet, with an air adjustable collet that goes through the bearing assemblies. You hold the rod, it grabs the rod, holds it there, you pull out the air collet, put in the boring bar, and you can bore it. You can bore the steel part of the rod for the bushing, or you could just bore the bushing when you're replacing the bushings. So when you're replacing bushings and rods, you really shouldn't hone more than like a couple thousandths out of them. And when you put the bushings in, they're usually like 15 or 20 under. And if you try doing that in the honing machine, it's very, very difficult to keep the two holes parallel to one another. So that'll give you side load on the pistons, which you lose ring seal if you do that. So it's a very important machine, and they stopped making these years ago, and they're very sought after because this is the only machine you can really do this in. Because if you do it in like a 3-axis CNC machine, you need a fixture for like every set of rods, and it's just so time consuming compared to this. This is made for doing just that, and it works flawlessly. And this here is a centerless valve grinder. It doesn't use a chuck, so it spins the valves on their own axis. So it just this here just drives the valve. The valve goes into these ball bearing V blocks, these precision bearing V blocks. And what I like about this is we always use a quick way valve grinder here, which worked excellent. The problem is if the chuck is even 1/10 of 1/1000 out, when you start doing back cut angles, they're not concentric with one another. So you have to keep the valve in when you're doing multiple back cuts. Say I'm doing a set of V8 valves, I would have to do the 45-degree angle. If I was doing a 36 back cut, I'd have to leave it in there, change the machine to 36 degrees, do the back cut angle. Then if I had another back cut angle, 28 degrees and so on, you'd have to do all your angles. You'd have to change the machine like 3 or 4 times to do each valve. It takes a lot of time to do that. On the centerless machine, you could do one angle at a time, and it repeats. Every angle will be concentric to the other because it's spinning the valve on its own axis. So it does a great job, but there's other things. It needs a little bit more maintenance with the wheels that drive it. There's the rubber on this wheel that drives it starts to go bad because fluid gets on it, and then it won't drive the valve. good. But all in all, it's a great machine, and I would not do without one of these. Well, that's it for now, but we'll have an expansion video soon. We're really excited about it. We have another space that we're outfitting all out. So we'll see you then.